We are back, and it is week 2 of the Mariposa Quilt Along. Last week we got all our fabrics cut, we got it all organized, and this week we are going to tackle our first 6 blocks. And this is really the best part to me, when you start making your blocks, when it starts coming together. I just love the block making part of a quilt. Your fabric ideas come together and see things start taking shape, which is so much fun. So let's pull the fabrics we're going to need for these 6 blocks. All right, here's what we're going to pull. We're going to pull 3 of our really large squares that are meant for our butterfly wings. And I think I'm just going to pick the 3 that I'm most excited to play with, which is these 2. And I think I'm going to pull, this really doesn't matter, by the way. You can choose any 3 that you want. I'm just being a little extra. All right, so you need 3 of these large squares. All right, I'll put the others aside. And then you need 6 of these bodies. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You need 12 of these squares here. I think they're the second largest. You need 12 of these smaller rectangles. All right, and then the rest of everything can go and be put away. All right, so just to recap, we've got 6 bodies. We've got 12 of the very shortest rectangles. We've got 12 of those 7 7/8 squares, and then we've got 3 of our largest squares. And we are ready to go. All right, we have some prep work to do before we can begin. And I am just going to draw my lines down the center of these squares on the diagonal. And we're going to start out making our flying geese. So I'm going to get all this prep work out of the way first. I like batching things because I find it easier to work like that. And I feel like I work a little bit quicker. You have purchased a lot of my patterns before. You know I like to skip this drawing line by using diagonal seam tape. But when it comes to blocks this big, you can't really use that. So I'm going to have to break down and draw the lines. So let me just work through these really quickly. So there is a separate tutorial within the pattern for the flying geese. So I'm not going to go way in depth for the flying geese. You can watch that other separate tutorial, but I do want to hit the highlights. So I'm just going to point out the parts of flying geese making where you might find some things just a little bit of a struggle. So first of all, I've drawn my lines, and I've separated them into stacks of 6. So we're going to put one set of 6 away. We're going to use those after we sew a little bit, and we're going to focus on these 6. And let's start putting these with the bigger squares. All right, and I am starting with this directional print. I've purposely chosen a directional print to show you that when you're making 4 at a time flying geese, you can't have both squares perfect in the correct direction. So if you're using a directional print, you may want to think about that before you move forward, because one set of my birds are going to look like this on one block, but the other set are going to end up looking like this. And you just have to decide if this is okay with you. For me, this is okay. I'm perfectly content doing it this way. But once again, if you are using a directional print, make sure it is facing you and in the right direction. So at least one of your blocks will be looking like birds in the correct direction. And we're just going to get these on here. If you starched your fabrics, this will be a little bit easier. We're going to put our drawn lines looking like this. And what I'm doing is I'm just trying to make sure that everything is like flush right in this area. So my top pieces are flush with my bottom piece, and they look good. And I'm going to pop some pins in this because it's so big. All right, so just like that. And then we're gonna move forward with making these. So here's one thing I just want to point out after you've probably already watched the video tutorial for flying geese. This does overlap this, and that's okay. You want to make sure that your lines are pretty straight though, so that it goes right into this with no problem. Second thing you want to make sure is that when you're sewing on both these drawn lines, you're sewing with a scant 1/4 inch seam. So don't do the whole 1/4 inch seam, or you may find that it's a little bit off. But it'll be okay if it's a little bit off, so don't freak out. But if you want to make things a little bit easier for yourself, just use the scant. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing for these other squares now. So I have them all pinned up, ready to go. And let me go get this sewn, trimmed, pressed, and then I'm going to meet you back over here for the second part of this making and point out one more tip. All right, so you should have something that looks like this. One tip before I show you the tip I was talking about last time. One tip when you're pressing these, make sure that this part here, that you're not leaving a lip. I've worked with a lot of quilters getting their flying geese accurate, and a lot of times people will leave a little lip right there. So when I first do this, I smooth this back. You know, I fold it back with my fingers, and then I use my iron, and then I just press. Don't be doing any of this maneuver with your iron. So you're just up and down making the press, and watch out for that fold. You don't want to leave a little lip right there. All right, here we go. And I'm going to get out, I'm going to grab these 6 squares that I drew my diagonal line in the beginning. I'm going to get these back out. And it's going to look something like this. We're going to put one of these on each of these funky looking shapes. Get it flush. And then put our pins in again. So just like this. I'm going to do that for every one of these. All right, so here we go. So same as before, we're just sewing on both sides of our drawn line. And to make sure you use a scant. In an ideal world, you're coming in right here where these two meet. And also, here's my big tip. And I don't know, this is one of the few tips that I don't know why it works out the way it works out. But when you send this through your sewing machine and you sew this side, and then you're ready to do this side, don't flip over and do this. All right, keep it like this and sew right down this way. So you're using the opposite side of your foot when you do this. I'm going to show you that on the sewing machine actually. All right, so you can see I've sewn right there. And now I'm going to sew this side, but I'm not going to flip it around like I normally would. I'm just going to sew it right here. So same thing, but I'm using this side of my foot instead of this side. The important thing is that I'm starting in this middle part of my flying geese instead of down here at this part. And you should have something that looks like that. And I'm going to go ahead and do that for the rest of these. All sewn up. And I don't know if you can see this on the camera, but you can see these little wrinkles in it. This is one of the main reasons that I always set my seam before I cut it. So this is just called setting the seam, and it just means giving it a little press after you get these sewn, so that when I rotary cut this piece, it'll be cut on a nice flat surface, and I can get my best cutting work done that way. I like to press these 4 at a time so I can, you know, make it look like this. And then give it a little starch, because it really will help these lay down and help them act right and stay in position. Just make sure, again, that you're not doing this, that you're up and downing your iron, because they'll warp easily because they're all cut on the bias. And we want them to be as good as we can get them so that we don't run into frustrations later. All right, and these look pretty good. So I'm going to do that for the rest of my flying geese. I'm also going to cut off all these little extra bits here, and then on these sides here. And then I'm going to double check their measurement and make sure that they're the correct size. And you can check that too. The size that you need is in the pattern. So let me get all this done. All right, so now you should have 12 of these babies, 4 of each color. I want to say this, making flying geese are really easy. Making them perfect, not so easy. So if you find little wonky bits in your flying geese unit, let it go. Take a deep breath. It's going to be okay. All right, so you do want to measure them and make sure they're the right size. If they're too big, trim it down. But do not, for any reason, trim this top part, because that is where our point lies and we don't want to lose it. So if you've got to trim something, take it off the bottom, take it off the sides. You shouldn't have to. They should come out just the right size or pretty darn close to it. But occasionally things happen, things go wrong. Whatever you take off this side, take off this side. So if you've got to take a 1/4 inch off this thing, take an 1/8 here and then take an 1/8 over here. Do not cut this top part. I can't stress that enough. All right, if they come out too small, it really should be just a tiny smidgen, and you can fudge with your seam allowance to try to save your point. And if you can't save it, you can't save it. It's okay. Don't beat yourself up. Don't even think about it. Let it go. You'll get the next flying geese. All right, so let's move on to the body. All right, we're sewing these to both ends of these. So like this, and then like this. I'm gonna go chain piece these, move really quickly. You won't need my help on this, you can do this. So I'll meet you back over here when they're done. All right, we are going to put our bodies with our wings. I want to show you this on the on my one directional print that I'm using. So you'll have 4 of these, but you'll notice that you'll want to put the ones that are together. Like, so this and this is obviously not together, but this one and this one are. So you'll have something that looks like that. So you'll have one going this way where everything looks accurate, and then you'll have one doing this number, and it'll just have to be okay, because you know there's no other way to do this unless you were to make flying geese units one at a time, which you're welcome to do that if you'd prefer. Then, because this is a long piece, I am going to pin these. Normally, because I don't have any seams to match up, I would just whip it through the sewing machine, but it's kind of long and I don't want to it to get off kilter. So let me show you the proper way to do this. So I'll turn it this way, and we're going to take this piece and we're going to finger press it right there. And then we're going to line that little finger press mark up right here with my point, which I could finger press this too, but I don't think I think I can eyeball this. So something like that. And then I'm going to pin here, and I'm going to pin on both of my ends so that it looks like that. I'm going to do the same thing when I do this one as well. So let me get all these done and get my blocks taken care of. So you should have blocks that look a little something like this. And this is getting me even more excited. I can't wait to finish the blocks, but that'll be next week. Let me give you a close-up of the blocks. So there they are. Yay, I am so excited. So there's the, see, like I told you before, one of them will come out the way you want them to come out, and then one of them comes out sideways. And that's just gonna have to be the way it is, because there's no other way to do it when you're using them 4 at a time. So if this is something you don't want going on in your quilt, you may wanna rethink your directional prints. All right, so that is going to wrap up this week. That was fun, right? Can't wait to do the rest of them and then see what our quilt looks like. If you have questions, if you struggled, if you need a little extra help, drop a comment below on this video, wherever you're seeing this. If you're seeing it in an email, reply. However you want to get in touch with me, and I'll answer your question on the next video, because the next time we're just repeating this, so I won't have a lot of stuff to do during that video. So I'm happy to answer any questions. Don't forget to post your progress on Instagram using Mariposa Quilt, and you'll be eligible for the giveaway that happens the day before the Wednesdays that the posts come out. There's a schedule on the blog post if you're confused about what those days are. I will see you next week.